what you need to have is you need to have the correct classes. So what classes we need to have here? We need to have product. We need to have salesperson. Okay, and we need to have one transaction. Okay. Although salesperson here probably does not contain much information, but that's what we need. Okay, that's what we need. So let me create this salesperson. So for each salesperson, what you have is you would have its ID, the salesperson ID. And what you need to keep track of would be the sales information, right? Like for the product one, how much it sold, and something else, right? So essentially here there are only 4 products. Okay, what we are going to do is we are just going to create product 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. You can use an array, that's fine also. Okay. Let's use an array. Okay, let's use it. I'm pretty sure that you can look at the specification here. And the product is only 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so it should be fine to use an array at this point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, that's the sales that this person has made. Okay, and now let's try to create a constructor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the sales, because you only have 4 products here. Okay, and what I like to have is I like to have for the ID have the getter and setter, and then also I'd like to have a method that when you get a new transaction, and based on the transaction, it would specify which product it sells and how many, the quantity, right? Right. So what I like to have is I like to say, oh, for this one I like to process a transaction. And what it has the product ID, and it has the quantity. Okay, and what it would do is it would need to update the total sales for that specific product. Okay, for that specific product. So for this product ID, what we are going to do is we are going to say, okay, sales product ID minus 1, because the ID is 1, 2, 3, 4, but the index is 0, 1, 2, 3 in this case. We are going to increment based on the quantity. Is that clear? But you need to keep in mind for this one, for this problem, whenever you use array, it is very, very important that you are going to initialize the array. It's not just allocate, but also you need to initialize this array. I'm going to say sales at I is equal to 0 for all these. So I know that I set initialized the sales array correctly. Okay. The last one that I like to have, definitely it would be useful, is get total sales for this person. How could you get the total sales for this person? Essentially, I need to get the sum is equal to 0 at the beginning, and every time I'm going to let sum equals sum plus sales, and then at the end I'm going to return the sum. That's the result that I need. This is the total sale that this person has made, total number of items, okay, that this person has made. Okay? Okay? And for this one also, we need to figure out the total sales based on the value, but we really need to have the product information in order to figure that out, right? And we are going to delay that method until we have the product information. Okay? Now let's try to create another class that's called product. So this is the modeling process. So you need to create the salesperson, and now let's create the product. And for the product, what information you need to have? You have the production ID, right? And you have price. Okay? Because at the end, we need to figure out what's the sellability of this one. So we need to figure out the sales for this one, right? So that will be the sales counter. Okay, we will know how many this guy, this specific item has been sold. Okay, and let me create, getter setters for all these, and I need to have a constructor. When I do the constructor, I do not like to see sales counter, because the sales counter will be get updated when we read in the sales slip. But what we are going to do is we are going to say that sales counter is equal to 0 at the beginning. That's what we are going to have for the product. Now let's try to say, we are going to read the slip information, okay? One sales slip, okay? For this one sales slip, we don't need to keep track of any information. So what we are going to do is, although the sales slip would be needed, okay, it would essentially, we don't need to store it anywhere, because it will be stored in the salesperson, and it would be stored in the product, and we do not need to use it again. Does that make sense to you? But what we need to do is, we do need to have two manager class. One manager class to manage the product, and one manager class to manage the salesperson. Okay, for salesperson. So let me do that. I have a product manager. So for this product manager, it's very, very easy. How many products you have? 4. So it's pretty straightforward here, okay? So I can just say that's all the product that you have, and we create a constructor. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, create an array with 4 entries there. Okay. And what you need to do is you need to say, oh, whenever you get something from the sales slip, what information you have? You have the product ID and you have the number, how many you have. So what we are going to do is we are going to say, oh, this one would have process sales also, or process transaction. That's what we have. That would, you would have the product ID and the quantity. So what we are going to do here is we are going to say all at the product ID minus 1 is equal to what? I'm sorry. And we will let this guy to process the transaction. There is a quantity. Does that make sense? Because we find that this is the product, and we are going to process for it. And what we are going to do is we create the method here. This would be very, very simple. This would be just be this dot sales count is equal to sales count plus quantity. So you are going to increment the total sales for this specific product. Does that make sense to you? And essentially, we will be done for the product manager. Okay, and let's look at the salesperson, and maybe we create a salesperson manager. So we have another class that's called salesperson manager. And for the salesperson manager, we would have a collection of a salesperson. And in this problem, we don't know how many salesperson we have, right? So it's very, very important that you are going to use a list in this case so that we can handle arbitrary number of salesperson. Okay? And here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to let me just go ahead and create the constructor for the salesperson manager. This one would be pretty simple. All I'm going to do is I'm going to create initialize the list. And what method you are going to have for this class? What methods you are going to have for this class? You are going to read the information in from the sales slip, right? For the sales slip, you are going to have salesperson ID, product ID. Okay. So what we are going to do is we are going to have a process transaction in this class. We have salesperson ID. We have the product ID. And we have the quantity. Okay? So what we need to do is first, we need to identify which salesperson this one should belong to. So essentially, we need to iterate through the list. Okay? We say if we, for all these, okay, we get the ID of the salesperson is equal to the sales ID that you have here, What does that mean? It means we would let this guy to process this transaction. Does that make sense? And after this, we are just going to break. Okay? But maybe this salesperson has never been entered into the system, into the salesperson manager. So at that time, what we need to do is we need to create such a salesperson instance and initialize this value. Okay? So that's what we need to do. So maybe, we never have this. We say if the I is equal to all dot size, what does this mean? Tell me. What does this imply if I is equal to all dot size? This means that this salesperson is not found in the list, because you go through the list and you did not find it. That's what we mean. Okay? If you had never found the salesperson, what we need to do is we need first add this guy, new salesperson. Let's just do that. With the sales ID that we have, and then we are going to add the salesperson in, and we will let the salesperson dot process the transaction. So you need to make sure that when you see the salesperson the first time, okay, you need to add it in. Okay, you need to add it in. Does that make sense to you? Okay. Now we will be done for the salesperson manager, essentially. Okay. Now let's take a break and see what other requirement we need to do, and we will finish in the next session. Okay.